Thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome. Okay, so I guess we have my intro, but before I get started, I have to take us back to the future. So the reason that I thought of starting off this way is, if you recall Back to the Future 2, going back to good old 1985, Marty McFly comes to an imagined 2015, and one of the first things he does, of course, is go into a diner and try to order a beverage. And sitting back in 1985 and imagining the world of 2015, what they thought about was, maybe he would order from an automated screen that drops down, and there's kind of like two talking heads arguing and trying to help him pick what he wants. He's like, all I want is a Pepsi. And then the bottle pops up and it flips itself around and a straw comes out and serves itself to him. And so it's like, okay, they thought of a lot of interesting beverage innovation that might come in the future. Like the automated screen was right, the flipping bottle, not so much. But what really struck me is that he was asking for a Pepsi, which is a soda. And I don't know how many of you have spent a lot of time looking at the beverage cooler recently, but here's an example of some of the new products that were just showcased just about a month ago at Expo West, which is like a big new beverage showcase in California. Regular soda is not really what is here. The closest thing to soda is gut health soda, so prebiotics, fiber. We have psychedelic water. We have caffeine without the compromise. We have alcohol without the alcohol. There's trip. There's CBD and even THC coming down the pipe. So what do we put in our products? I mean, which of these things should we really act on, and how do we know what's a big opportunity? So far, and this is even a bit outdated, actually, a couple of years, but PepsiCo has really expanded our portfolio across out of just soda, into water, tea. We have kombucha. We have even juice. We moved a little away from, but coffee, etc. The question is, what do we do with each of these categories? And as the categories blur and our portfolio becomes more and more complex and challenging to our business model, how do we know which of these trends to act on? So we've got to really rethink how we think about product innovation, especially for PepsiCo. It's such a marketing-driven company. Now we're really trying to be more of a product-focused company. So some of the old methods of qualitative focus groups and kind of like getting a group of consumers in a Target into a room and asking them like, hey, what flavors would you like if you were having a gut health soda and things like that, that can go so far for us. But the reality is people don't always know exactly what they want, first of all. And second of all, we need a way to be kind of faster, more agile, and more comprehensive in how we think about, how people think about what they want out of their beverages. So I'm going to talk about the attribute engine. This is definitely a practitioner's point of view. We mainly work with vendors to actually do the NLP and the classification, the other AI capabilities behind this. But what it's allowing us to do and the way we're applying it is looking across all the spheres that influence beverage trends. So TikTok being a very big new one and also presenting a lot of challenges for us with like, how do you extract what's in the video to understand what people are saying. But more traditional social media, people might post, hey, I'm here having this beverage and it really makes me feel energized, or it really makes, I love this to go with my chill vibe, or things like that. We have on Reddit, people are talking about, their health and wellness routines, their fitness routines. What do you do before you work out? What do you put in your shake? What are you kind of hearing from your holistic wellness provider is like the best new supplement to take? All of that stuff gets pulled in, and then the really critical part is that it gets classified in a very beverage industry specific taxonomy so that we can really drill down. For us, it's not non-carbonated soft drinks, it's soft drinks, it's sports drinks, it's energy drinks. Within sports drinks, you have subsegments, and all of this tagging lets us really drill in and say, okay, maybe we want to do a sports drink with that targets a particular occasion, and we can almost create the universe of conversations that are happening around that consumption occasion to help us build the concepts that we'll then test with consumers and see, is this something that is actually appealing, or is this kind of a weird trick of AI? So we use this really in three ways. One of the ways is about defining strategy. So how do we kind of cluster all of these conversations into themes and then understand the development of these themes? Gut health, for example. that's a big trend that's been building and building over the past probably 10 years. We can actually track all of the different ingredients, all of the different benefits, all of the different sort of propositions that are in that theme and know, okay, maybe this is time for us to act. Then we're developing concepts. So, a gut health soda that has berry and, electrolytes. We can actually pull from the consumer and from the broader kind of food and culinary related discussion, which are those attributes? What are the flavors that we should put in our 5 or 10 different concepts that we'll then take into a more kind of traditional concept screen and decide which one to go ahead with. And then if you've actually ever worked in corporate innovation, you also know that selling it inside and externally to key partners like retailers for us, that's a really big part of it. So this data is allowing us to actually quantify and measure things at a much more granular scale. So, hey, Walmart, you want to take our new SKU that has dragon fruit? Well, here we can show you that dragon fruit has really been growing in consumer popularity and discussion, and this many millions of views or this rate of growth. So yeah, it's something you might want. And that kind of level of granularity is something we were really lacking in the past when a lot of our thinking about consumers was more based on kind of psychographic or emotional connection versus what's in the product itself. So to bring this home with an example, Pepsi Nitro, for those who aren't familiar, was a pretty big innovation we did last year in the cola space, the first kind of nitrogen-infused cola. It acts kind of like a Guinness. And the story behind this was, it was actually a technology that our R&D folks had been working on for a number of years. And it was kind of a big investment, not something typical in the category. So they had been working on this, and we had some research that said, there's segments of consumers who don't love the big sharp bubbles of cola, and maybe like a smoother bubble would be nice for them. But we couldn't really put that together into a compelling consumer proposition until COVID. And if you all recall, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was the lockdown period where people were stuck at home, and one of the first things they did was turn to kind of the shelf-stable items that they had available to them. Now, no toilet paper, but there was a lot of instant coffee around. And, people started making these like whipped coffees called the Dalgona coffee and sharing videos and posts of this like coffee with this really creamy, frothy, smooth foam on top. And we were like, that's interesting. We also see a lot of trends around like whipped cream, creamy, double cream, like those type of ingredients and words were trending. And we started to piece together, there's something about like the visual appeal of beverages, the visual nature of, especially the way social media has evolved from, text to images to video. How does that impact what people are looking for in food? They want something that looks cool, that they can talk about, and so do we, because we want to generate that attention. So we pulled together all of that into what really became like a way to take this technology and put it into a consumer and a very kind of on-trend package. And that is Pepsi Nitro. And then we've done, similar with other innovations. So I think the one that John was really interested in was Major Melon, which really started from us saying, okay, we want to go after specific demographics that are not always, at the fore when we do sort of that traditional method of like, let's bring people into a group. And so we can even start to narrow down into different target demos and say like, okay, so, if we're looking at a flavor for the Hispanic population, what are the flavors that are really resonating there as opposed to Gen Pop and things like that. A couple of key success factors from my point of view and our team's point of view as practitioners. The classification, and as I mentioned before, that very kind of beverage industry specific classification. Because what we're doing is we're using NLP to classify every discussion that you can find on, the web related to food and beverage. The systems are not yet really smart enough to know, like, that I'm saying this is something that's in my beverage versus something that's with my beverage. So, one of my colleagues famously said, hey, I love this data, but like it requires so much kind of cleaning and interpretation. Like I can't go to my leadership and tell them that the next big opportunity in popsicles is pork, just because pork is coming up. So pork popsicles, like not so much. On the other hand, I was doing some research on tea, and the word cheese kept coming up, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is another pork popsicles problem. But I started digging into it a little further, and I see that cheese tea is actually a trending popular drink that started in Taiwan like around 2010, and it's been kind of building in popularity, especially in like kind of trendy tea shops in New York and LA. And what does it have? It has a thick, creamy, foamy head of like whipped cream with a little salt, I guess, on top. So very similar to kind of the Dalgona coffee and the Pepsi Nitro. So that was a case where I was thinking, okay, this data is, giving me nonsense, but it actually was turning me on to something I didn't know about. Landing zones. So this is a big thing that our team really does, which is like the data itself is never going to give you the answer. Just knowing that an ingredient is trending, or just even if you manage to cluster it, that also doesn't give you kind of a strategy. So we've spent a lot of time on how do we take this and plug it into what our teams are doing, and critically the way that they see the world. Each of our teams has there's the view of the world from the sports drink angle, and there's the view of the world from the soft drink angle, and there's the 30,000-foot view, and then the very granular view. In order to plug in, we really need to do the work to kind of meet them where they are, because the last thing that our innovation teams and our marketing teams have time to do is sit around like sifting through pork popsicle data to try to figure out what they should do. And then finally, favorite quote from Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think one of the main lessons that we've taken out of this too is we can have all the data, we can have all the ideas, but if we can't actually organize and incentivize and operate against it, it's sort of meaningless. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we drive our innovation strategy off of this data from the beginning and organize our teams and structure ourselves so that everyone's kind of reading from the same script when we think about where to play, how to win, and what our concepts should look like. So just to sum up, this is helping us with real-time like consumer centricity. That's a big thing at PepsiCo. As we become more product kind of focused, we needed to find new ways to bring that consumer centricity at scale with this really, really rapid pace of change that we're undergoing. The quality of the data, and that's like something I didn't mention, but for example, Twitter was kind of the original easy place to pull this data from, but you get a lot of stuff on there that has really nothing to do with the intention of the words being used, even if they might be beverage related. So how do we really know what is the right conversation to bring in versus not? The relevant taxonomy. So like my ability to know that stevia is a natural sweetener is a replacement for sugar. Sugar needs to be replaced because people care about health. All of that built into the classification and the thoughtful way that I can kind of cut and filter the data is really important. And then those integrated frameworks, plugging into the frameworks that the teams are using already to see the world and not just kind of giving them another thing on top of what they see. And then definitely, this is still something, and we're using still definitely very classic AI, as we called it yesterday. So far, it's definitely been a dance of human and machine. We are not just saying, even despite what our sort of broader marketing folks like to think, they'll say, hey, can you just look into the attribute engine and see what's the future of this, or spit out my concept for me? It doesn't really work like that. It's still a lot of analysis and interpretation, and kind of us, making sense of what we can get in order to inform the questions at hand. And I'm a little early, but I can open it up for questions.